All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Danny Bobrow. Danny, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Thanks, Kevin. Pleasure is mine. Great to be here.
Well, I'll tell you, I am really looking forward to this. And I've got to start off by just giving a shout out to Daisy Jean because so is Daisy, is she like your PR person? Is that kind of the role she holds for you?
That's one of her hats.
That's
Yes.
one of her hats. Well, I'll tell you, Danny, she is really brilliant at talking you up because she reached out to me and was telling me about you and stuff, and she telling me why she thought Danny would make a great guest for the podcast, and she by the time I got done reading what she sent over, I'm like, heck yeah, I want to talk with Danny and get to know him a little bit, and so we've already had that conversation, and now here we are getting to come back around for another conversation to do this podcast interview. And I am definitely looking forward to this. And I'll just, start off by just nice, simple, easy question to start with. And Danny, what do you do and who do you serve?
Well, thanks again for the shout out to Daisy. I appreciate that, and so will
You
she.
bet.
I am a the founder, and what I call chief architect of the Persuasion Blueprint, which
Okay.
is a communication skills mastery system, curriculum, however you choose to refer to it. And it's interesting. My background is in marketing. I've been a digital marketing specialist with my own firm since it was possible to be a digital marketing specialist, which takes us back to like 1999. And
Mhm.
for the 10 years prior to that, I engaged in more conventional, what are now termed, non-digital marketing strategies. So I've been at it for about 40 years. But what I found in the course of basically helping businesses get their phone to ring or visits to their website was that generating the initial inquiry was necessary but not sufficient to success. It was what happened after the initial contact was made that was at least as important as getting it made in the first place. And that's really what led to the development of this program, which is all about helping people connect with their counterpart quicker and more consistently and effectively. So
Okay.
that's what we do.
Okay, very good. So how did you even get into this line of work, Danny? What's your backstory?
All right. Well, I'll start where I started my own marketing firm, and that was in 1989.
Okay.
I come from a family of dentists, actually, and so I did gravitate largely, but not exclusively, towards healthcare clients in the healthcare space.
Okay.
But that ran the gamut from fitness clubs to weight loss clinics, health coaches, chiropractic, podiatric medicine. And my brother, who was and continues to be a practicing dentist, suggested that I focus in on dentistry, that there was a need there, and that it was helpful to specialize and really carve out that niche. Long story short, that's what we did. But
Okay.
in terms of answering your question about how I got into what I'm doing now, and I alluded to it a little bit previously, which is we found that we could get the phone to ring, or we could get people to visit websites, or we could get people to walk through the door. But what we found was that people did not have the skill set to effectively and consistently connect, first on an emotional level, because that's critical, and then to guide that prospective client, customer, patient toward a course of action that was in their best interest, and to persuade them to commit to and follow through on that commitment. And that really was the birth of the Persuasion Blueprint.
Wow. Wow. So so really this really started with you serving dentists in this way, but then over time you expanded to serve other kinds of businesses too and stuff.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Because what we
Okay.
do is really agnostic. It's
Yeah.
non-specific to any, not only is it not specific to any particular business vertical, but I think it transcends business entirely. The skills and mindsets that we coach have positive implications for any relationship, be it personal, familial, business, nonprofit, governmental, any relationship that involves two human beings will benefit from practicing these skills.
Yeah. Yeah. So what inspires you most, Danny, about the work you get to do and the impact you get to have?
Oh, it's the benefit, it's the effect, the
Okay.
impact that seemingly small shifts can have on communication. There are so many things that people do reflexively and with the best of intentions
Uh-huh.
that lead to less than desirable outcomes. And so my joy derives from helping people see for themselves where a subtle shift can make a huge difference in their life.
Yeah. So what's an example of some of those things that you said that people do reflexively, but yet don't lead to the kind of results that they really want to have?
I think a really common one that most of us can relate to if we're honest with ourselves is listening technique. And we've
Mhm.
probably all heard about the value of listening and that we were born with two ears and one mouth, so we ought to listen twice as much as we talk.
Yep.
But there's a real quality to listening. We've heard about active listening and effective listening, but there are some very simple habits that people can identify and then break with just a little bit of awareness and presence of mind. And some of those, in no particular order, are that when people listen, they're often not really listening so much as thinking about what they're waiting to say next.
Yeah.
And that really deprives you of an opportunity to truly connect with the person and really understand where they're coming from, which is what they're looking for. In the Persuasion Blueprint, we talk about the importance of connection and how through a phenomenon I call expert override, people will often be preoccupied with telling you how competent they are because they are competent and they've heard things a million times before, so they don't bother doing what's more important to your counterpart most often, which is confirming that you get their problem, challenge, or opportunity and can articulate it at least as well as they can themselves.
Yeah.
So that's something that gets in the way when you think about what you're going to say before, instead of listening to what your counterpart is saying. You know, another one is related. These are all basically related to the question that I always like to ask myself when I'm listening to somebody, which is, what is my goal here? Is my goal to enrich and enhance the relationship, or is it to flatter my own ego? Because if it's the latter, then I'm going to do things like think about what I'm going to say,
You bet.
interrupt the person, finish their sentences, debate whatever they say because I think it shows how smart I am and I convince myself that I'm only trying to help you, fix problems when I'm not being asked to fix problems, and divulge confidential information. These are all bad habits that many of us, to varying degrees, commit when we think we're listening effectively. And the result is either relationships that never get off the ground, relationships that never deepen because we're only asking surface level questions because we haven't truly connected with our counterpart, and which gives us explicit or implicit permission to ask the deeper questions that really make a difference. So these are the things that I think you can quickly and easily benefit by just listening for in your own listening.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I, I've I've been this naturally curious guy for my whole life since I was a kid, and sometimes it irks my wife because I ask so many questions all the time, and especially when it comes to our kids, But and with entrepreneurs, I mean, I just love talking with entrepreneurs. I love hearing what they're up to, what's got them jazzed, what's got them inspired, what challenges they're up to, what opportunities they're trying to take advantage of. And of course, for me, I just always default to, well, who do I know who might be able to help them with whatever it is they're telling me about? I just default to that.
Right.
And but I can't tell you, how many times when you just listen, like you said, not with the intention of waiting for, or maybe not so patiently waiting for our turn to talk, you know, but just listening to listen because we genuinely want to hear what the other person says. Which leads to now we're asking more questions about what they just shared us so we get a better understanding. And I can tell you in my own experience of just doing that for so many years, we end up giving people this gift they so seldom get to receive, which is this feeling of just being seen, heard, and understood, and what a beautiful gift to give somebody.
Absolutely. And you
And
put your finger on it when you said genuine. The you're genuinely an authentically interested person. But the benefit of that is, and it's been said that if you want to be interesting, be interested.
yeah.
And we talked about your experience as a commercial fisherman. And it's interesting. I have a story. I went on uh, a tour off, I think, of the Kenai many years ago. And
Okay.
I
Okay.
before I went, it was shared with me that the guide is just a great guy, you know. And I would ask people, well, what's so great about him? I said, well, I can't tell you. He's just a wonderful person to be around. And so I went in there not just to catch fish, but to see what his secret was. And his secret was, by and large, that whenever anyone talked to him, his response was always the same. It was to respond with, "Really,"
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
was just a way of saying, "Keep talking, tell me
Yes.
more." And
Yes.
people would tell you more, and they felt like this was a great guy, which he is. He was
Yep.
sincerely interested in learning, but it's that thing that people like to talk about themselves.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, so Danny, what's an example of a result? And you have to name names here. You can if you want. That's totally your call. And maybe we can share more than one result. But what's a result that you have helped a client get that you're just incredibly proud of?
Well, in the past month, I've worked with an oral surgeon, a general dentist, and an attorney, as
Okay.
well as a friend who's working to communicate better with his daughter, his teenage daughter, and a another friend who's working to do a better job communicating with a team member.
Okay.
I mean, some of them I can actually give tangible results, but like my attorney student, he and his assistant were doing a competent job of converting calls into cases,
Okay.
into case clients. But by doing employing the skills that are in the persuasion blueprint, and I think his specific skills that he picked up was mirroring people's conversations, pausing during his presentation to give people a chance to contribute so that because collaboration builds aligned action, I like to say.
Mhm.
And when you want someone to feel like they're have an ownership in the solution that you're proposing, you want to really slow down and again avoid what I'd mentioned earlier, expert override, to give people a chance to ask questions, to share their unique story, even if it's not unique to you because you've heard it 1,000 times before.
Yeah.
And so I basically got him and his team, his assistant, to slow down and really be time wise. And instead of being, sometimes people want to rush to get off the phone. They think they're busy or they think that the other person is busy, but people aren't busy, and there's no such thing as boring conversations or as long conversations, just boring conversations.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
keep it interesting, engage with people, let them know that you care about them, and your closing ratio will increase, and theirs certainly did.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, okay, so now that we've got a little bit of context set here and people have an idea, listeners have an idea a little bit about, who you are and what you're all about and what you guys do. I want to switch gears just a little bit and I want to start talking about the relationship side of all of this. So, Danny, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Well, I'm pleased to be able to tell you that I am aware of that I don't live in the illusion that I developed on my own without some meaningful impact and and assistance from others. I can go back to grade school. My gym teacher Mr. Simmons, I just talked to him this week with my brother about him with my brother.
Okay.
And Mr. Simmons was the first one I think that taught me self-esteem, which was very much needed by yours truly. I was born with a congenital visual defect, and it meant that I was am blind in my left eye and only minimally correctable in my right.
Oh, okay.
And I grew up as a young person, I felt that I was intelligent and athletic. I just believed that I was. The problem was I had nothing to demonstrate athleticism or academic ability because I couldn't read well, so I wasn't a very good student. And I was a terrible athlete because I couldn't see the ball.
Okay.
And most sports at that time were involved some sort of projectile. But Mr. Simmons treated me and everybody as though we were adults. He would yell at us, but you never really felt like he was criticizing you as much as trying to motivate you. And so
Okay.
that made me feel like an adult. My third grade teacher, Mrs. Lucy, whom we still correspond on a regular basis, so that tells you something about the relationship, I think.
Wow.
She taught me with a well, did teach me, but also treated me with a great deal of respect. And
Okay.
then I would move on to sophomore year in high school, where again, my gym teacher, Mr. Rusk, just in one session before we started whatever calisthenics we were going to do, introduced the concept of the psychological fatigue barrier. I had
Okay.
never heard about that before, and I've never heard it referenced since. I
Huh.
don't know if he made it up or what, but he said it basically holds that your mind will tell you to give up long before your body needs to. Or
Mhm.
I subsequently learned long before your mind needs to. And that was a light switch that turned on for me because I began to excel athletically after that, albeit not in team sports, but I got involved in martial arts and weightlifting and
Okay.
endurance running, and it made a huge difference for me. And then when I finally barely graduated high school, my ophthalmologist, in his infinite but belated wisdom, said, "Well, now that you're going to college, I think you should get some reading glasses." And I probably should have gotten those reading glasses in second grade, you know, but I got them, and then I began to excel academically as well. And I could go on, so what I learned to be after those lessons was persistent and resilient. I became an endurance athlete. I became a mountaineer, an ice climber, and was able to perform well. And then I got involved in adventure racing, which is a team sport, as is mountaineering. When you do expeditions, you don't very often do them on your own.
Hmm.
Uh, I have done it once or twice, and I'm glad I'm here. But it would have been a lot safer to do it as a team. But I wasn't really equipped to deal with team dynamics. I learned that I was resilient and persistent, but what I needed to become was patiently persistent and respectfully resilient. And through my
Mm.
interactions with some teammates on the mountains, I learned that people don't care about your vision or your motivation unless they believe that you care about theirs.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, the more you focus on another person's needs, even when you're feeling down and drained and exhausted, if you focus on somebody else, you get energized.
Yeah.
So it's really a form
Yes.
of enlightened self-interest to care about another person.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're so right. It does. It it feels so good to help somebody that when especially when they just really appreciate it and stuff, And I mean that is an amazing feeling that comes from giving of ourselves to others.
And it's a measurable rise in the team energy level that you can measure.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
incredible. And I've experienced it when I first started. I mean, I didn't do it well, and I demotivated people, and the
Okay.
team suffered as a consequence. But I like to think that I learned from those negative experiences, which are probably the best teachers,
Yeah.
the missed opportunities, the burned bridges, and instead of engaging in self-recrimination, just look at it as a teachable moment. And as I like to say, failure can either define or refine you. And I
Yes.
choose to have failure refine me
Yeah.
now. It
Yeah.
wasn't always that way, but I think I am now.
Yeah. Well, so what is an example of a situation where you personally, Danny, got to make a really substantial impact? And maybe even in the moment, maybe it surprised you a little bit, but yet you also know that would have never been possible if not for your relationship with any one of these people. Well, what's an example of something like that where you were empowered in that way?
Where I was empowered because of a relationship I had with another person.
That's right.
Well, I mean, I think I learned from Mr. Simmons that when you and I was a Sunday school teacher, I'm a ski instructor. I teach a lot of young children as well as adults, as well as young adults who are not so young. But I mean, what I learned was that you treat people with respect and you talk to them like they're adults, and children pick up on that too. I don't mean being harsh or expecting them to be as responsive because I mean, their prefrontal cortexes aren't even developed until they're, well, some people say until you're 24 years old.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your entire brain isn't developed. But what I found was that by treating people with respect, patience, and also good humor, that makes a lot of difference. I think I got that good humor from my mom and dad. They always had a quip or you know, engaged in pithy repartee. And I'll tell you that on the mountains, the reason I think people liked to climb with me, not because I was the strongest, because often I wasn't the strongest, but it was I always could make light of any situation, and I'm pretty good in the moment coming up with a an anecdote or just an ironic comedic observation on our situation, and I think that's held me in good stead, and I
Yeah.
can point probably to my parents for that
Yeah.
gift.
Just being able to keep the mood lighten or to lighten it if it starts getting heavy.
That's
And
right.
yeah.
Reminding people that we paid to be here
There we go. There we
was
go.
always a good source of humor and reminding people that yeah, you're right now thinking you're never going to do this, you know, you're sorry you did it this time, you're never going to do it. I used to say forget the pain, do it again.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Well, for anybody that's listening to this and thinking to themselves, man, Kevin, I really love Danny. I love who he is. I love how he shows up and stuff. And maybe they're thinking like, you know what, man, maybe he might be able to help us, or maybe I've got a friend that they might be able to help. Any websites, any resources we can share with folks, Danny?
Absolutely. One easy way to find me is just to type myname.com into
Oh,
the into the website, into the internet. DannyBobrow.com is my website.
okay.
When you're there, you can peruse the homepage. There's a little video on who I am. There's a short introduction to the 7 module series that I offer. But what I suggest everybody do to really establish a baseline and to get a feel for what we're going to be talking about, should I have the privilege and honor of doing so with you, is to complete a persuasion scorecard. And that's just a series of questions, about 21, I believe, that, as I mentioned, establishes a baseline for where you are on the continuum, the continua of caring, connection, and collaboration. That gives us a sort of a jumping off point. The next thing is to schedule a strategy session, which is again complementary. My goal is to be your uh, persuasion blueprint Sherpa. And
Okay.
I've learned this from my experience in the mountains that instead of the client consultant relationship, it's a much deeper bond than that. It's based on mutual respect, understanding, and flexibility. So what I'll want to do is based on your scorecard and our conversation is to get a real sense from for who you are and where you are. What are your goals, challenges, and opportunities?
Mhm.
And essentially demonstrate to you that I'm able to articulate that and practice what I'm going to be preaching, which is how to establish caring, demonstrate a connection, and then build aligned action through collaboration. And then hopefully you'll be persuaded to proceed to the 7 module series, which I developed with busy people like myself in mind.
Okay.
Each module averages about 15 minutes in length. It's me communicating a distinction, a series of mindsets and skill sets, which then follows with an assignment or two. You complete the assignment that gets submitted, and then depending on whether you've chosen to have me then meet with you one-on-one, we go through that, or you just go through the results yourself and decide how and whether you want to proceed with the relationship.
Okay.
But it's a self-contained program. It's work at your own pace, and of course, I offer a 100% money back guarantee. If you don't feel that you got sufficient value when you went through the process, just let me know and I will refund your investment. And I've yet to be asked to do that.
Wow, very good. Very good. Well, is there any last thing that you feel led to share, Danny, before we call it a wrap?
Well, I'm glad we had a chance to talk about listening. I think that's a great way to quickly establish it. The other thing I would to establish connection with people, the other essential component, I talk about establishing rapport, conveying empathy, and exuding enthusiasm. I've done quite a bit of writing and research on the concept of enthusiasm because I think a lot of, especially salespeople, can shoot themselves in the foot by not using enthusiasm appropriately and properly. I think sometimes we think that we're going to bowl people over with our enthusiasm before they even know what we're talking about. That we want to demonstrate our belief and confidence in our product, which of course is essential.
Mhm.
But the best kind of enthusiasm I like to think of is responsive, that you build on the other person's enthusiasm by watching for those visual, auditory, and other cues that you receive from your counterpart. You sense what would make them enthusiastic or what is enthusing them, to coin a phrase, and then build on that, share it with them, and it's sort of a dance or a crescendo that you build to. But it's important to use enthusiasm wisely and carefully. That would
Yeah,
be my parting suggestion for your audience.
very good. Well, Danny, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And I'm excited to get this out there and share it with folks. So thanks so much.
My pleasure, Kevin. The pleasure was mine. Thanks for the opportunity.
You bet.